Internet's back up. My Discord thinks that it is happening because I'm simultaneously streaming on TikTok and on YouTube, which I think is probably correct. That sounds right. That they're just like the internet people are like, whoa, that's a lot of data coming out of one spot at one time, and even though I pay for it, right? Even though I pay for it, doesn't matter. We live in Canada. We pay the most amount for our telecommunications, and we get the shittiest possible service. Like, when they say unlimited, there's always these little caveats and always this kind of this, that, and the other thing, and all this kind of bullshit that they adhere to it. So I assume that it's being done specifically to prevent people to actually know what the fuck's going on. So I'm just not going to stream on TikTok, which I'm like bummed about, honestly. I have found this TikTok experiment to be very successful. It has grown my channel and grown my my own thing more than anything else. But I really, really don't want to interact with the TikTok chat is the thing. I'd much prefer what I've done here and what's happening here with people being able to come in and people being able to have a rational adult conversation and actually talk to one another like fucking adults about this kind of stuff. But it does seem to me like that might not be on the cards, but if it means that ultimately I need to pay a little bit more in order to guarantee a bit more service, then I think I'm going to do it, right? Because, like, it just seems to me like I'm hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, and I don't know what to do about it, and I don't know. And there is always that sort of latent behind the mind sort of fear that they're literally just shutting leftists down. Like that's something I think about all the time. That like they're literally just like, oh, let's just shut these guys down. You know, like and they don't even need to do it. Like they don't need to do it by having like a person listening in, right? Like they can do it with algorithms now. Right? They could just do it with algorithms. And to me, I think that is what is actually going to start happening. Like I don't think it's like a Black Mirror episode, and it's not beyond the ken of the CIA or anything to actually do this. You know? And that's sort of like I don't have the source for that, but it is the fear. It is the fear that they are going to do everything they can to ensure that someone like me and that people like me don't get anywhere and don't make any headway and don't succeed because they know. Draz Slime, it says it's very likely you're being shut down by the government. I mean, yeah, I don't know, Draz. Like, I don't know. That to me seems to be one step too far. Like, I think the most likely narrative and the most likely story that makes sense is that I'm just, when I'm doing a simultaneous stream, one on TikTok and one on YouTube, it's just like a lot of information all at once. And it's probably creating some kind of technical issue that I'm unaware of. And that there's this conflicting thing that probably happens that just fritzes the whole thing out. That seems to me to be more likely. But I mean, that said, like I know for a fact that my YouTube has been shadow banned for sure. Like absolutely, it's the case. And I've witnessed TikTok streams. I've seen my TikTok stream go from 500 people in the chat to 2 in the space of about 10 minutes. And that's on a stream that has like 5,000 likes. And it's because I'm talking about certain subjects. So there's absolutely exactly what Leon is saying here, that shutting down leftists is mostly automated at this point. That they can just pinpoint certain subjects and certain conversations that you're having, and just you say certain things and you say certain words, right? And there's just certain things that are unavoidable that you have to talk about, right? If you want to talk about the subject, right? If you want to talk about the subject of communism, you need to say the word communism, right? If you want to talk about the subject of what to do about the Nazis, you have to say the word Nazis, right? You can't not. And I do worry, and there's enough. There isn't like the document, you know, like it's not like we've had the Church Commission come in and be like, oh, this is an actual thing that the CIA is actually doing, right? So it is all just like speculative, but there's a lot of like enough people are talking about this experience. Enough people are talking about this experience. And there's a fellow that I follow on TikTok who's also on YouTube. Goes by the moniker Midwestern Marxist. And he talks about this fairly regularly. One of the things that he experienced was that someone doxed him. That someone on TikTok doxed him in order to like sell mugs about it for this guy. This guy was just like an event to sell merchandise to his idiot fans. And this Midwestern Marx fellow makes several videos about the event of him being doxed by this guy. And his videos talking about this guy doxing him get removed, but the video of the guy actually doxing him stays up, right? Like that's very suspicious. And he talks about how he even appeals it. He even goes and like talks to someone about it, and the video's still up. And this all flows into what I've been talking about before, which is that eventually the ruling class is simply going to do it nakedly. That right now there is this kind of like coy sort of like, oh, tee-hee, right? That's just the algorithm, I guess. Tee-hee. Maybe you just need to try harder. Tee-hee, right? But eventually they'll just straight out say, like, yeah, we're destroying communism. We're destroying communists. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're doing. And they'll just be naked about it. It will happen. It's happened before in the past. Like, that's nothing new, right? The only difference is that now there's this technological bent, right? Like, it used to be that communists, instead of talking over digital platforms like this, would just get into a hall together, right? And have a conversation with one another. And the police would go in and break it up very nakedly, right? The McCarthy era was as naked as it gets. Like, are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? The blacklisting was real, right? We've made like full feature films about the blacklisting of communists and communism throughout the era. For God's sakes, the United States government literally murdered millions of people in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Korea, while saying outright we're doing it to staunch the flow of communism. Like, so the idea that they're not going to do it on these digital platforms, like, of course they are. They absolutely are. And if they can do it by just shutting... right now they're trying to be a bit circuitous about it. They're trying to be a little bit more like, oh, we'll just deprioritize you in the algorithm. We'll just make it so that your algorithm isn't that people if people want to find you, they can, but they have to put in the exact name. That we're not going to help them. Hey, Anemone, how you doing? And and so that's where they are now. That we're just going to deprioritize people. We're just going to put them down. But that's not going to be enough. Right? That's not going to be enough, because their ideology is such an overwhelming failure that it's not going to be enough. And eventually they'll just start nakedly saying, yeah, if you're a communist on the internet, we're just going to remove you from the internet. Like, and it's not going to be new. Like, If the internet was around when Joe McCarthy was around, right? That's what he would do, right? Like, and anybody believe otherwise? Like, that's what he would do. And so they'll do the same thing, right? And the very people, like the last guy I was talking to, right? The very people who are screaming their heads off about free speech, the freedom for Nazis to be able to spread their bile, right? Will absolutely be in favor of it. Right? Got to get rid of those dirty commies, right? Like that's absolutely what's going to be happening. But we keep at it. We keep trying, right? We keep trying because, you know, I think the alternative is kind of madness. You know, the alternative is a form of madness. You just fall into this sort of state of despair, watching it all happen in silence and isolated, because that's the goal, right? The goal is to ensure that you're isolated and that you can't actually get connected to anybody. And I don't know, maybe the solution to all of this is to stop streaming TikTok with my Wi-Fi connection and instead just use my data. Just up my data so that I spend a little bit more to get unlimited data on my phone and then stream that way so that it is actually on two different data streams. That might actually be the way to do it. We'll see what the tech people say when they turn around on me, but that would be a workabout, and it would end up meaning spending a little bit more for telecommunications, right? Because in Canada, you know, we're not spending enough, right? We're not spending enough. But if I want to do that, and I think I do, I think that the simultaneous streaming on TikTok and YouTube has been very successful. It's been very, very successful. It's been nuts, like it's been crazy, but it's been very, very successful. And so I think I am willing to spend a little bit more and to put a little bit more flesh on the table in order to support that format. And I think that is probably the way to do it, if it turns out that is what is happening. And yeah, that's a simple solution, right? Because it means that I'm... Yeah, and the algorithm is programmed to hide leftist content. For sure it is. Like, it absolutely is. I mean, for God's sakes, like... And not just leftist, if you ask me. Like, basically anybody who has ideas like maybe people shouldn't live in poverty, right? Like when did it become that working a full-time job should provide enough money to pay rent become a far left ideology, right? Like, when did it become a far left ideology to say everyone in the society should have access to food and shelter? Like, when did that happen? One would assume that that's just a normal thing, right? That's the basic expectation, that if I'm going to abide by the rules of this hierarchy that everyone pretends is good, one assumes that I should get something for doing so, right? Providing the basics like food and shelter seems to be like a pretty basic low-level buy-in that the system doesn't seem interested in. And it does seem that the AI is being trained to be fascist. It does seem to be the case that should like, we're just building the Terminator, eh? Like, we're just doing it. We're straight up just like, let's just build a Terminator army and just fucking let them cut loose, and we'll train them to be fascists. And so when they finally get autonomy, they'll just basically walk around being fascists, because that's what we've trained them to do, and that's what we've trained them to act. And we're very dim-witted people. Like, we're very dim-witted people. Like, we literally can't... I just love it when... and I do actually love it. Like, when people come into the stream and are like, communism's never worked. It's like the most dim-witted thing a person can say. you're basically just coming in and admitting that you don't know anything about the subject. Like, straight up. Like, you don't know anything about the subject. In a very clear and obvious way. And I'm just getting used to them, you know? Yeah, the AI is built to make money. No American company wants to sponsor a platform that allows the other side to, yeah. And like, why would you ever want to, why would you ever want the idea that people should be safe and have food and shelter to spread into the society, right? That like everything is just hard-nosed, rugged capitalism. If you're failing, it's a you problem. It's your fault, right? That's the only thing that they want. That's what they want to convince you of, for sure. That's what they want to convince you of, and it's just sad, you know. It's just sad. It's as sad as it gets. Like, our society could be really good. Like, we could have a really, really cool thing going here. Like, we could be really, like, think about like the free love movement that happened throughout the 60s and into the 70s, and think about the social change that happened throughout that period of time, and that could have continued. That could have carried through. That instead of selling it all to Wall Street to make fake money dollars in bank accounts somewhere, they could have actually continued this process of democratizing and socializing the country and civilizing the country. That think what 50 more years. Think what 50 more years of a society democratizing itself and socializing itself would have looked like. Think about what a society, like when the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Fred Hampton, and like imagine if when that happened the people took to the streets like they did when George Floyd was executed, right? Like, what would our society look like if the people have not been so fucking naive and childish? Because it's like, that's like super, super, super naive to see these black leaders, and then also like the president of the United States and his brothers get literally assassinated in front of your eyes, and you're all and everybody is just like, yeah, normal. That's just a normal thing that happens in normal societies. But American culture is so fucking racist, and so fucking backwards. They don't know what's good for itself. What's the coal miner's riddle, Compton? What's the coal miner's riddle? I hope you enlighten us. Democrats sell out rail workers to protect billionaire executives. The U.S. House voted earlier today to crush a potentially nationwide rail workers' strike by imposing a contract negotiated by the Biden administration that had already been rejected by workers in 4 out of the 12 rail unions. The largest of these unions, Smart Transportation Division, represents 30% of freight rail workers. As a proud pro-labor president, I'm reluctant to override the ratification procedures and views of those who voted against the agreement, Biden said in a tweet yesterday. But in this case, where the economic impact of a shutdown would hurt millions, I believe Congress must use its power to adopt this deal. It's the same thing over and over again with these fascists, right? It's the same thing. Like, literally Justin Trudeau has stood in front of the nation on several occasions and been like, yeah, sure, clean water, breathable air, workable land, a future for our children. Yeah, all of those things are absolutely important for sure, but fake money in accounts. Those are equal and on pair with one another, and we need to pay attention to that. And we're not going to sacrifice the fake money that we put in accounts for breathable air and workable land and a future for our children. Like, they've outright explicitly stated this in front of us over and over and over again. So, of course, they're going to use that same logic and that same rationale and that same language to just break up a rail strike, right? That's not going to destroy the future of civilization for children, right? Like that's so much more low stakes, right? And these people don't care about that shit. Like we don't care about our children at all. Coal. What's the coal miners riddle? Coal miners. You've got me curious, bud. Is it the riddle of the two miners? I'm gonna think that it's this. Two miners come back home from work in an elevator. One miner has soot all over his face, but the other has a clean face. The one with the clean face wipes it with a handkerchief. The other does nothing. Why? The one with the dirty face looks over to the miner with the clean face and assumes his face is clean. The miner with the clean face looks over at the one with the dirty face and thinks his face is dirty too, thus cleaning his face with a handkerchief. That's funny. That's actually really funny. Yeah, that's exactly the case. Like, you look over, you see a dirty face, you think, yeah, my face is probably dirty. What a ridiculous world we live in. What a silly place we're in as a people. I'm a bit thankful, in fact, that the TikTok thing didn't work